So we are now in Parashat Vayishlach. Parashat Vayishlach, we see the culmination of a process that has been brewing over 3 parashot, which is the conflict of Yaakov and Esav. They were born together as twins in Toldot, and then everything that went on there, and then Yaakov ran away, Vayetze, in the previous parasha, and now 20 years later he's coming back to Eretz Israel, and he needs to finally confront his brother, his twin brother, his evil twin. And they are, of course, polar opposites, starting out. Yaakov is a dweller of tents, very innocent, very honest, and Esav is a hunter and a man of the field, and the parents are not in agreement as to who should inherit and continue the tradition that started with Abraham. And now it's the showdown. Now they're coming together and they're meeting each other, and it takes place over 2 major incident steps. One is a spiritual encounter of Yaakov and the mysterious angel, whom the sages tell us is Saro shel Esav, the governing angel or minister, so to speak, of Esav, the soul root of Esav, really. And then he fights with him and he wins, and he receives his new name, Israel, which means to win over God or an angel. And then the second is their actual meeting. And here we see something very different. We see that the moment Yaakov meets Esav, he bows down before him 7 times. And all of his wives and children also bow down before him. And then several times he refers to Esav as his master, and he refers to himself as a slave. And this takes place before the fight with the angel and after the fight with the angel. And so we want to make sense of all this, of this situation, this incident. What is the, and especially what is the meaning of the bowing down before Esav? And in order to understand what we're talking about here, we want to also understand what they symbolize. What do Yaakov and Esav symbolize here?
Can I ask a question? It seems that Yaakov has a sort of a trend of avoiding confrontation.
In a way, so if you just mind just closing the door using that little thing over there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, no, just using the, yeah, just stick it there, man. You have to wedge it between the door and the, yeah. So let's wait a little bit. So Yaakov and Esav, it's not just Yaakov and Esav, because Yaakov is now receiving the name Israel, so he's symbolizing Israel, the people of Israel, Judaism, the Jewish tradition, and he's laying down the path that we want to go down. And Esav is the father of the kingdom of Edom, the Edomites. And Edom, according to Chazal, are the founders of the Roman civilization. So Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, were the descendants of Esav. So really Esav is here signifying Western civilization in general. And their confrontation is a confrontation of how Judaism should confront the West. And not just the West in general, but more in particular, the West as a political power, or something that is the more forceful and powerful aspect of Western civilization, because the more philosophical or intellectual tradition is signified by Greece. And Greece comes from Yefet, who is a descendant of Noach. So there's a phrase among historians that when Rome conquered Greece, in terms of military and political conquest, it was conquered by Greece culturally and spiritually, because all of Greek art and architecture and mythology, it's all coming from Greek culture. So we can say that Greece is like the intellect or the head or the the spirit of Western civilization. Then Esav in Rome is more like the body of Western civilization. So we're talking about the body here. The elements of Western civilization that have been able to win over the world, that have made the Roman Empire as big as it was, and have made in modern times Western civilization such a massive superpower that's taken over economically and culturally the world over. So this confrontation here between Yaakov and Esav is well, generally these two people, these two twins, signify these two very powerful. They both come from Abraham and Yitzchak, and they have the blessings that go with this, but they're going in totally different direction from the moment they're born, or even before they're born, according to the Midrashim that they were fighting during the pregnancy also. And especially we want to understand what is the meaning of bowing down before Esav on the one hand and calling Esav my master, and on the other hand just having won over or having won the battle with the spiritual root. So how can we make sense of this? So this is our topic. And another thing we want to ask in particular is that when they meet, so interestingly, when they meet, there's no conflict at all. And Esav is forgiven Yaakov, and they're hugging and crying, and everything is okay. And then Esav is very impressed by all the children that Yaakov has now. It's a bit like two friends, one became a Baal Tshuva and the other one remained secular, and then they're meeting years later, and the Baal Tshuva has a lot of kids. And they're really comparing these two civilizations, or these two paths. And then Esav says, come with me. Let's go together. Let's go together to my place, to Har Seir, the Mount of Seir. Seir comes from the description of Esav being hairy. When he was born, he had a lot of hair. And he says, no, you, my master, again he's referring, that's the last time he's doing so, you go ahead, and I will take my slower pace. Et nahala le'iti. I shall walk more slowly. And why? For two reasons. Because I have a lot of animals and because I have a lot of children. So it's livestock, and we have to understand what this means. And we have children. And these two things that make me move at a different pace. I move at a slower pace than you are, but I will get to the same place you are. I will meet you at the mountain of Seir. I shall go more slowly until I meet you. And of course he doesn't do this. He's going he's going to Sukkot, a different place. But maybe the promise will be fulfilled some other day by some other generation. So this is what we want to sort of decode this situation. So we have to start really by a very major Hasidic interpretation for generally what Yaakov and Esav symbolize, or how we should understand them. And what does it mean that on the one hand, Yaakov is a chosen one, and he needs to be called Israel and not Esav. But on the other hand, the fact that Esav was the firstborn, that also means something. And more than that, the fact that Yitzchak loved Esav so much must also mean something. It can't be that it's just plain wrong about him. There has to be something right. And the Torah gives us a lot of hints that there's a lot going on with Esav, we're given the whole story of how he's disappointed and how he cries out in anguish, and there's a lot of, and also it was the same with Ishmael. Before we say goodbye to Esav in this parasha, in the end of the parasha, we're given in great detail the list of the kings and the leaders, the alufim, champions, that came out of him. So there's a lot of hints that Esav we're not just saying goodbye to him, there's more to him than meets the eye. So according to Kabbalah, the explanation is the following. According to Kabbalah, Esav and Yaakov signify two, so to speak, worlds, spiritual worlds. Esav symbolizes the world of Tohu, or the world of chaos, but it's not the chaos that we're usually thinking about. And Yaakov symbolizes the world of Tikkun, the world of rectification. So literally, or not so literally, but the common translation is chaos and rectification. Tohu actually means to wonder with an O. To litot, tehiyah. There's a lot of awe and wonder and and thinking that has to do with the word tohu. It's not just chaos. Chaos is a Greek word. It was used to describe tohu vavohu in the creation of the world, but tohu is really a far more interesting and cryptic concept, what tohu really means.
Tohu is a Greek word?
Chaos is a Greek word, chaos. But tohu is a Hebrew, tohu, it comes from wondering, tehiyah, to wonder, to think deeply about something. So tohu isn't just chaos. It comes across as chaos for some reasons, we'll explain in a minute. So what are these two worlds, and how do they answer this dilemma of who is greater? The whole question we're having is who is greater than whom? Winning over Esav means that there's something in Yaakov that's greater than Esav, but bowing down before Esav seems to suggest that there's something about Esav that's greater also. And also, like we said, Yitzchak and Rivka, the parents, one loved, the father liked Esav, the mother liked Yaakov. So the whole question is who is greater than who, has to do with the definition of these two worlds. So what does it mean, the world of Tohu, and what does it mean, the world of Tikkun? So the world of Tohu is the first world. It comes from a midrash that says that before Hashem created the world, He created many other worlds. And He destroyed them. He created and He destroyed them, many worlds. And in Kabbalah, it all becomes just one world, or one generic label for all these worlds. And that's called the world of Tohu. And the world of Tohu is described as the world that has a lot of great lights, very high lights. It's the highest of lights. Light meaning energy, will, vision, creativity, energy. So they have an amazing energy, amazing vision, or visions, for how the world should be. But in this world, the vessels, again, there's lights and vessels. Lights need to go into vessels. The vessels are very narrow or simplistic or one-tracked. And then when you have these kind of energy, but you don't have the vessels to contain them and to express them with, then what you end up having is things breaking up. And the world of Tohu precedes the world of Tikkun. And so what is Tikkun? Tikkun is the opposite. What is Tikkun? Tikkun is a world, it builds up more gradually, more slowly, and the focus now is on the vessels, not on the lights. It has to do with building proper vessels, not just practical, realistic ones, but also it means being very sensitive, it means listening to other points of view and combining them. It means being mature. It's mature vessels. But the downside is that the world of Tikkun doesn't have so many lights. Why doesn't it have so many lights? Because the focus is on the vessels. The vessels is taking different aspects of things and trying to combine different points of view and putting them together. And then you can't have each light going in just one direction, the other direction, because you're combining different perspectives, different ideas into one. When you have chaos, when you have tohu, all the lights are running in all directions, and they're competing with one another, and then they break. How are vessels made? Vessels are made when light starts slowing down and meeting each other and containing one, and each light also wants to listen, not just speak to the other light, but also listen. So by listening, you become a vessel. So if each light is containing another light, that means it's listening to the other lights. It's becoming a vessel. And that's how vessels are formed, by integrating points of view and listening to other perspectives, and then you have more. But then you don't have the energy of taking one simple truth, one simple slogan, and running with it, because you're listening and stopping short and trying to get more perspectives on things. And that's a more mature view of things. So, and now why does Tohu come before Tikkun? Well, we know this from life. When we are in our stage of adolescence, it's a very chaotic time. We cling on to one truth. We become there's something that grabs our attention, or it's a book, or it's a person that's charismatic, or that's made an impression on us, and then everything becomes that. And there's one principle. We try to build an entire world on one principle. We're very devoted, we're very energetic about it, we're putting total confidence in this idea. But then what happens is we have this desire and will, but our vessels are so immature, so small, so narrow, and we're constantly breaking up. That's why teenagers are full of angst. Their angst is because they're in a chaotic stage. So chaos has to precede. And you consider it in everything. When you first have an idea for something and you sketch it out, it's very rough. That's the chaos, that's the tohu stage of it. And then you sit down and you calm down and you get out of your experience, of your, chavaya, your experience, and you look at it from another perspective, and then you gradually, you put it more and more into vessels, and you're able to write it down and explain it. Or when you have an idea, you talk about it to someone, and it's jumbled. Why is it jumbled? Because you haven't formulated it yet. It's just coming now. That's the tohu stage. So tohu has to precede tikkun. And it has bigger lights. There's something about the original inspiration, the moment of realization, and there's something about also, like we said, putting all the energy into one venue, into one idea. It's so simple, it's powerful, it's also very childish, but it's also very, very powerful. So the idea is that Esav and Yaakov symbolize these two, so to speak, worlds. And the idea is that Esav, so what does it mean? It means something very deep. It means that on the one hand, Esav is greater than Yaakov. Why? Because the lights of the world of Tohu are higher than the lights of the world of Tikkun. Tikkun is, like I said, when you're mature and you think about everything twice, and you take a lot of different criteria into consideration, so it's not as powerful, it's not as impressive. It doesn't impress an adolescent. Adolescents like simple, powerful ideas.
Tohu's potential?
Oh, it's not potential. It's a lot of energy. It's a very big vision, a great vision, a great idea that you don't know how to express it in the world in a way that really sticks and is incorporated into other people's visions. I have my vision, you have your vision, we can start shouting at each other without listening. But if we want to integrate our vision into reality, we have to learn to slow down and listen. But then it's not as powerful as before, because now it becomes more complex. Then you have your own point of view, and I have to listen to your point of view, and that qualifies what I'm saying. And then everything becomes more complex. It's more, the focus is moving from the lights to the vessels, from the experience and the vision, the idea that I had of the simple truth that now I saw as giving the answer to everything. That's what happened when communism was around. People thought we have one answer for all the problems of the world. It's the problem of class. If we solve the problem of class, everything will be okay. And then sometimes you think it's technology. Technology will bring peace and harmony and health. And sometimes you think it's just being in a monastery and praying all day, then everything would be okay if just everyone would do that. That's a childish, chaotic way of looking at things. And but the other side of this is that the world of Tohu has very high lights. This energy that goes into not taking too many elements of reality into consideration, just going for what you believe to be true, it's very powerful. So the world of Tohu, the lights are extremely high and strong and amazing, but down here it breaks. When you have big lights and small vessels, they break up. So the idea is that Esav, the root of Esav is extremely high. Esav is the kind of character, he symbolizes this kind of type of person who's extremely excited about something, but down here it ends up being, you can't talk to him, you can't stand to be around him. He becomes a rasha. In the language of the Torah, he becomes a rasha, a wicked person. Wicked person here symbolizes that it's not working out. It's not as really wicked, it's not wicked at all. His root is higher than Yaakov. But because the vessels are so immature and they break, so down here he becomes wicked. He becomes a man of the field, a man of hunting. He marries the daughters of Het, Canaanite women that's forbidden, and he brings a lot of grief to both his parents at the end of the day. And so here he becomes wicked. That's like the vessels breaking. But up there, he's amazing. He's much higher than Yaakov. So now we have this thing that Yaakov on the one hand is less high than Esav, because he doesn't have all this amazing energy. He says, well, on the one hand this, and on the other hand that. That's a dweller of tents. He has at least two tents, at least two perspectives, and it's like vessels, and he's looking at it from one direction, another direction, and it's not It doesn't sound, later on we're going to have Moshe, and Moshe, there's one of the explanations for why he stammered, right? He would stammer. And you speak slowly and not as clearly. You're not a charismatic leader if you stammer. But so how do you say stammer in Hebrew? It's legamgem, right? To stammer or stutter, right? It's two words. So, to legamgem. So, what is legamgem? The root is just 4 letters. It's gam, gam. What is gam? Gam is also. And the idea is that why would he stutter? Because he tried to say, gam this and gam that. Also this is true, but also this is true. If you want to say just this is true, you're losing me, because I can see there's another side to the truth as well. That's what you do when you study Gemara. When you study Gemara, at every moment, you have to listen to 2 different opinions, and you can't just say, well, this one I like and this one I don't like. That's not studying. Studying Talmud is saying, well, I have to look at the word from Hillel's perspective, then I have to look at the word from Shammai's perspective, and I have to, at the very least, understand what they're saying, and even a little bit empathize, I would say, because you have to, really understand where they're coming from. And that becomes one big stutter. It's one big, so it's not as, it doesn't impress you like someone saying, we're just going for one thing or the other thing, because you have to take, but so it's the most complex, rich, mature wisdom. That's what that's Torat Moshe, but it ends up here, if you're looking for some simple truth, it ends up being like a stammer. So hang on. So now the idea is that Esav is a man of Tohu. He has amazing lights, but he doesn't know how to put them into vessels. He's running in one direction, then running in the other direction. First he doesn't want to be the Bechor, he sells the Bechorah, then he says, I didn't get the Bechorah, and he's shouting like crazy, I didn't get the Bechorah, because now he does want it. He's, how do you say hafachpach? He has these different energies. No, not wrath. Hafachpach is when you're inconsistent, when each... yeah, that's a word in English. That's you change it, you're moody, and you change your...
Fluctuation.
You're fluctuating between different feelings and emotions, and they're not integrated to one another, because at each moment you see this one element of the truth and you're running in that direction. It's very powerful. It's amazing energy. So in this respect, the world of Tohu is higher than the world of Tikkun in terms of its energy and lights. But on the other hand, down here, it breaks up. You become this wicked person who can sell his position as the elder, and it could do a lot of wicked things. But and Yaakov is in the middle. He doesn't. It's not in either extreme. He doesn't have those high lights, but he doesn't fall so low. He has light, and then he's trying to integrate them into vessels. But yet, so the idea is this. The idea is that Yaakov, being born, holding on to the heel of Esav, and then later on, stealing his blessing, buying the elder position from him, and then stealing the blessings, then marrying the woman who was supposed to be his wife, Leah. And then finally, this parasha confronting first the angel and then Esav himself, is all these are steps in a process of what is really the ideal combination. The ideal combination is neither the world of Tohu, which breaks, nor the world of Tikkun, which you're saying down the gam and this and that, but then the lights are dimmed, because it's something called the lights of Tohu in the vessels of Tikkun. You need to start out with Tikkun, with being moderate and learning and trying to integrate different perspectives, and then you want to gradually reclaim and regain and add to this all the amazing energy of Esav that made Yitzchak love him so much. Yitzchak doesn't love. Yitzchak wants Geula. In the Geula, we're not just, very humble and kind and listening and gentle people who say, well, that's true, that's also true, I can see this perspective. Just like a Talmid Chacham in a Beit Midrash, he says, well, on one hand this, on the other hand that, and there are different sides to everything. And that's not how you conquer the world. And Yitzchak wants us to conquer the world. He wants us to bring this light of Judaism, the light of Torah, the light of Emunah. And you need the energy of Esav. You need to say that at this moment I'm going in this direction, I'm going all the way. I'm not doing it in a violent or childish way, but I am taking all this energy and implementing it. By the way, now later, in the end of the parasha, we really see how Esav is breaking up into different soul powers or different energies, each running in different directions. We see this at the very end of the parasha, when we're saying, like I said, goodbye to Esav. Then we're given the list of 8 kings that came out of Esav, the kings that ruled Edom before there was ever a king in Israel. Now that's a very weird thing to say, because the first king is going to be King Saul many, many years from now, and so it's just a weird thing. So in Kabbalah, it becomes something very meaningful. We have, if you look at those 8 kings, you see there are really 7 kings, and the 8th one is very different. The 7 kings, they each have their different name, and each one it says, and different details about how they ruled and what they conquered. But of each one it says, he ruled, and then a few words later it says, and then he died. And then the other king ruled, and then he died. And then the next one ruled, and he died. And the idea is that in Kabbalah they symbolize, they're called the kings of Tohu, the kings of chaos. It's like this energy that goes, the first king goes, I'm all chesed, I'm just love. Everything, all you need is love. That's the first king. All you need is love. You don't need maturity, you don't need fear, you don't need power, you don't need suspicion, you just need love. That's all you need. And that's amazing, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work because it creates this world that has no boundaries and no limits, and it's not a good world.
Are the 7 metaphors, like, are they Kabbalistic metaphors for the Sefirot? Is that?
Yes, it's the 7 lower Sefirot, but they're working independently without any cooperation. And that's why each one dies. Each one dying is like that particular world of chaos, a world of Tohu.
He wasn't taking anything else.
Yeah, he was not taking other elements into, again, it's very, why were people so in love with the hippie movement? Because it was so simple. It's all you need is love and flowers and LSD, and it's all about chesed. It's having no boundaries, and it's also just being young and enjoying life. And they had these songs going, talking about my generation. Then they say, I hope I die before I get old. Why? Because getting old is a lot of vessels, and it's not light. I just want light, and I don't care if the lights burn me up. It's the same as you take the guitar and you go all the way, and then you break the guitar. Because the guitar dies before it gets old. The guitar solo becomes so powerful, it burns itself up. That's the world of chaos, breaking its own vessels. All right, and with Neil Young, it was rock and roll is here to stay. It's better to burn out than to fade away. It's better to burn out than to fade away. That's a classic Tohu world example of it's better to, why? Because lights are greater than vessels, because light, you have all the energy, and this is Esav. This is Esav, and that's why Esav is self-destructive.
Wow.
That's why he's bringing about his own, he's selling the b'chorah, and then he says, what have I done? What has been done to me? Now he's the victim, it was stolen from me. And so his descendants, or spiritual descendants, the 7 kings, each one is all chesed, then the other one says, no, chesed is terrible. We were traumatized by chesed now. The king before me, he was all chesed. All you need is love. No! All you need is fear. All you need is having boundaries and having, because we saw what happens when all you need is love. People would go crazy. So now it's all about, and then each king is going in the opposite direction. Now what happens with the 8th king? The 8th king is very different. The 8th king, well, he's different in 2 respects. And we learned a lot from this. So he's different in one respect, is that we never told that he dies. It says, Vayimloch, he ruled.
Shaul?
No, his name is Hadar. Shaul is one of those. Well, not Shaul, we have the Jewish Shaul, who's the Israel king, but now we're talking about the 8 kings of Edom. One of them is also called Shaul. That's a hint, by the way, that later on when we have Shaul and David, then relatively speaking, Shaul is a little bit of a chaos king. He's the namesake of an actual chaos king. And David is more of a tikkun king. That's why we want Mashiach ben David, not Mashiach ben Shaul.
So Shaul's Jewish.
Shaul is Jewish and is tikkun, but compared to David, is a little bit of a chaos king. And we see this. He started out humble, but then he became a little bit too much obsessed with power and not being able to acknowledge the fact that David is the following one. And then he started hunting David and trying to kill David. So he has a little bit of the chaos. But those kings of chaos, one of them is also called Shaul. It's not the same Shaul, it's a different Shaul. So now the 8th king is 2 things. He doesn't die, which again, we can see not as saying that he didn't die, but as saying that his kingdom survived him. He wasn't this kind of dictator that says there's one truth, and now everyone is going to go my way, and I'm not listening to anyone else, and I'm going to be a dictator, and then what happens to those dictators is that the people overthrow them. These are the 7 kings of chaos. So he didn't die, so we can see didn't die as he was able to maintain, a kind of kingdom that lived on after him, that survived and that went on, that continued. And then the second and more important detail that he's different from all the others is that we're told that he was married, and we're told the name of his wife. The wife was called Meheitavel, a very beautiful name. Meheitavel. And now, when a woman is named in the Bible, it's meaningful. There are a lot of male names, but there are very few female names, because if in those times, if you could have whole lineages of father and son, and they would have to be, you would have this
chronological?
Not chronology, it's a chronic. That's the list of kings. And then, but you don't have this with women. When a woman is mentioned, she must be very important if she merited to be mentioned in those times. So the fact that so were they not married? So either they were married, but they didn't see their wives as important, or they had no wife, or they had many wives. But the fact that Hadar, the 8th king, has a wife is very, very meaningful. It means that he had a person that he was in serious dialogue with, which means that he took the lights of chaos and started building them into vessels. He needed to listen to his wife, and he was able to talk to his wife in a way that she would listen to him, and she became like his partner. If she's mentioned by name, that means she was very significant for him, and she was maybe maybe a co-ruler. And anyway, someone who was and now the fact that you can be in dialogue means that then you can take those lights and also be in dialogue with your people, with your kingdom, with the world, with reality. So when 2 lights meet, each one becomes the other light's vessel. You have a dialogue. Each one is speaking and listening. And so the idea is that the 7 kings, it's all coming from Esav. The first 7 kings are the kings of chaos, the kings of Tohu. That's really Esav himself, running all over. And then the 8th king is the lights of Esav going gradually in the future into vessels also. And Esav also needs to be rectified. This is what it means. That Esav also needs to be rectified. And the 8th king, Hadar, symbolizes the beginning of the rectification of Esav. And the idea is that Yaakov's mission in life is to take all the energy and lights and ideals and ideas that Esav develops, and Esav develops them in a very unhealthy way on the one hand. That's why he's so to speak wicked here, because it doesn't work, it keeps breaking up. But on the other hand, the energy and the idea, because he runs with it, he's developing each and every idea that he runs with. He's going with Greek philosophy. He's going all the way into understanding the world through the lens of Greek philosophy. Or he's going in the direction of Christianity, or he's going in the direction of technology, or he's going in the direction of whatever it is. He develops everything very, very, he's going all the way, but the problem is it's not balanced. But what Yaakov has to do is to have to take all these lights and put them into the more mature, multifaceted, multi-perspective vessels that he's building up. So what we learn from this is this. We learn from this that Geula, right, redemption means, he told Esav, I will meet you in your country, in Har Seir, the mountain of Seir, but I'm moving slowly. Et nahala le'iti. Why etna laliti? Because, like we said, when you're doing tikkun, it's not going to go so fast. So, for example, suddenly there's a light that shines into the world. It's the light of feminism. The idea that women are equal to men, and it's an amazing energy. And if you run with it all the way, and you're not taking into account other aspects, like tradition and like family, or like how a family is built with the mother being able to give birth to the children. And there's so many things to take into account. If you don't take them into account, you're going to just run with it, and you're going to cause a lot of problems down the road. And if you're running with technology, we have cell phones, that's an amazing invention. And if we're running with it, the idea of Yaakov saying, I'm going to walk slowly, means that every new light, I integrate gradually and carefully into my system. My system is my livestock and my kids. And the livestock, by the way, signifies something much deeper than the livestock. He doesn't say livestock, he says melacha. Melacha is the task. So it's a word associated with the Mishkan. Mishkan has melachot. So the idea is that I want to have the Shekhinah reside. I want divine presence in the world. That takes a lot of care. I need to be careful about this. And also taking care of my children.
It's a bite. It's a bite.
A bite, yeah, exactly. A mishkan is a bite. So I'm moving more slowly because I want to take all your lights. You have individualism, you have psychology, you have art, you have technology, you have feminism, you have amazing ideas. And they're all very great, but I need to be careful. If I run with technology, I'm going to have kids that are totally lost. If I run with individualism, I'm going to have a society that disintegrates, that's atomized. If I run with communism, there's something very, there's an element of truth in everything. But if you run with it and you don't do it gradually, and there's an expression in Hebrew, akev betzad agudal, is to advance that you put your heel next to your toe. And that's his name, Yaakov, right? It's heel next to your toes. I'm going to go most slowly, but slow but sure, slowly but safely. And then I'm going to it'll take me many years, but I'm going to get to where you are, but I'm going to, with my kids, and with the Shekhinah dwelling in reality. You're running and breaking up, and then you have the one king that's ruling and then dying, and another king that's ruling and dying. And all of the history of Western civilization is all this one generation rebelling against the previous generation, and Freud was very obsessed with the image of Oedipus killing his father. And he ended up that it happened to him, that his student rebelled against him and did something like patricide, like killing him. And the reason he was obsessed with this is because Western culture is very much patricidal, right? It means killing your father, not in the sense of actually killing your father, in the sense of going against the previous stage. So you had Greek philosophers that didn't like the debauchery of popular Greek culture, that it was all about nudity and worshipping the young and the body, and they said you should love Platonic ideas. And then the people came and killed their philosopher. And then Christianity is negating all the barbaric religions, and then very barbarically forcing them to become Christians. And then you have Renaissance and secularism sort of throwing away Christianity. And you can see this in more, when you zoom in, you can see it in smaller steps also. And the Jew, throughout this history, the Jew has been gradually assimilating elements, but not saying, well, now we have to revolutionize everything. When it happened, it didn't work. You had a lot of Jews going into communism, and then it didn't work, and you had a lot of Jews going into Reform Judaism. That's also not working. They're not staying Jewish. But those that are walking in the footsteps of Yaakov are saying, well, you can say I'm negating all the lights, but that's not Yaakov's legacy. Yaakov's legacy is I want to inherit Esav's light. I just want to do it slowly, gradually, carefully. I have kids to take care of. I have a Shekhinah to put into this world, and I need to do it gradually. And now we come to the image of the bowing down and how we should understand this bowing down before Esav. So let's start by how we shouldn't understand it. So we can say that there are two ways of, when we're talking about Jewish being connected to Jewish roots and Jewish tradition, then looking at Western civilization a bit from the side. We're inside of it, we're surrounded by it, but we're also separate. And we have to look at it, look at Esav, and we can come to two very wrong conclusions. And the Hasidic interpretation of the bowing down is the proper combination of these two false conclusions that we could reach. So one false conclusion is, well, Western civilization is very childish, it's very hectic, and it doesn't know what it's saying. And first there was one big theory and it rules everything, and then the next generation it collapses and you have another big theory. And we're older and wiser, and we know there's one king coming, and then one king, he rules and he dies, and he rules and he dies. And we have nothing to get from that civilization, we have nothing to do with it. And it can be in a very sort of arrogant way, that you say, well, I'm connected to the eternal truth of the Torah. I don't need to get anything from Esav. Esav Rasha, he's wicked. And Yitzchak was just wrong about Esav, that's what it means. And there's nothing, and he's just Rasha, and I'm a tzaddik, and I'm above, and I should stick to my Torah path, and that's it. And then another, which appears to be the polar opposite, but it could be the same person sometime. He's saying, no. He's saying, we should bow down before Esav. What does it mean to bow down? We should tell him. So this is an actual interpretation given by a very well-known, influential rabbi in our generation. I'm not going to name him right now, but he's well-known, and I have a lot of respect for him in other areas, but in this I think he's very wrong. He says that he interprets this situation, that when Yaakov is bowing down before Esav, he's telling him, I don't want the blessings that I stole from you. I'm regretting it, and I'm giving you back your blessings. Why? Because your blessings, what were they about? They were about ruling, having power, having property, having wealth. And Yaakov is not about that. Yaakov needs to be just spiritual, just ishtam yoshevu alim. And he's saying, I regret everything. I regret having stolen your brachot. Take it back. You should have power, politics, energy, all this. I have my own thing. You go your way, I go my way. And now, I said it's two different. One is very humble, maybe too humble in front of Esav. It's almost like humiliating yourself. It's almost like turning the other cheek, we can say. Ironically, you become similar to at least one variation of Esav, which is the Christian variation. You say to Esav, I don't want anything to do with political power, with anything that's forceful. You get the power. I'm just going to sit here and study Torah and daven in my tent, and you go and conquer the world. Religion has nothing to do with politics. That's a very Christian perspective, right? In the New Testament it says, we should separate the Caesar and God, give to Caesar what Caesar should rule this world and God should rule the higher world. That's a very Christian perspective, not a Jewish perspective. So this kind of interpretation of the story is very Christian in character, because it tells Esav, Western culture, you go be Caesar, so to speak, you rule this world, I just want the world to come. I just want to be spiritual. That's a very Christian perspective. You're saying, well, you take your blessings, but then you become like him, or at least one iteration of Esav, the Christian iteration of it. And the other one he's saying is, I'm not putting myself down, I'm putting myself much higher than Esav. Esav is such a rasha, I don't want nothing to do with him. But these two perspectives, one is totally above Esav, the other one is totally below Esav. They're really one and the same in some way, because they're saying, I just want to be in the light, in spirituality, in the Torah, in davening, in the Bet Midrash, and the rest of the world I leave to Esav. That's what these two perspectives have in common. One is arrogant, one is full of humility, one looks down at Esav, one looks at Esav sort of admiringly and says, you get your blessings back and you rule the world. But both of them leave Yaakov the way he was, how we found him when he was just born. Ish tam yoshevu alim, a dweller of tents, was just studying Torah all day. But the Hasidic interpretation, the Kabbalistic Hasidic interpretation, says, well, these two perspectives are absolutely wrong. Well, they're both right and wrong. There's something right of each one of them, but we have to combine them. there's, on the one hand, again, it's the same idea of chaos, tohu and tikkun. If it's either this or that, it's very tohu, and we need to combine them. So combining it goes like this, and this is the most beautiful understanding of what does it mean to bow down before Esav. So it's really two different meanings, and they complement, and then they integrate these two perspectives.
Is it coming from like a specific Rebbe?
The Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
And so Lubavitcher Rebbe says like this. Says on the one hand, bowing down is very simple. Bowing down is admitting, Yaakov admitting that Esav has the higher lights, that the world of Tohu is higher in root. Its root is higher than my lights. And Mishtachave is admitting that you have these amazing lights that I don't have. I need to incorporate them gradually by following in your footsteps. That's what I'm doing ever since I was born. I'm following in your footsteps, not in the sense that I'm admiring you and you're my hero and you're my idol and I'm just copying you, but in the sense that I want to get something that you have that I don't. You have this energy. That's what our father liked. And not mimicking you. It's not an inferiority complex. That's what the Rav that I mentioned, that's saying that he was bowing down, he says he had this inferiority complex. No, he's following him because he knows he has these really great lights. But there's another sense to bowing down. Bowing down means, so we imagine someone bowing down and then he's below the person he's bowing to, but we can also say, we imagine he's really higher than him, and he's bowing down in order to get to him. And he's bowing down in order to, the word in Hebrew is levarer oto, to clarify him, to refine him, to rectify him, to take the spark out of the shell, the good thing out of the bad thing, the lights out of the childish vessels. And in order to clarify or purify or find the good elements and distill, in order to distill the sparks from the negativity, you need to be above someone. And then the bowing down isn't bowing down in the sense that I'm below you. Again, the first interpretation is I'm bowing down because you have the higher lights. But on the other hand, you can't express your lights in a good way. I have to find a way to express them. So I have to be above you, and I have to go down and find the right way to do this. I'm not staying in my spiritual position or in my knowing that I have something that you don't. I'm going down and I'm trying to understand you and to find the good things that you have. So it's being above you really, and then bow. And now this, if we're able to somehow maintain these two contradictory but really complementary points of view, then we have something amazing to go with as we're going out into the world that's still in many ways ruled by Esav. You know, according to Halacha, Galut Edom, right? There were all Galut. There was Galut Mitzrayim, and then there's Galut Bavel, and there's Galut Paras, right? And this is Galut Edom. Until we have Bet HaMikdash, we're still in Galut Edom. It doesn't matter if we have the state of Israel, and if half of the Jews or more are here. We can say that there's Shivat Zion, a lot of things are beginning, but it's still in many ways Galut Edom. The Esav, the Western civilization, is still ruling the world. It's very different now. There are many voices within Esav that are calling for finding balances and finding integrations, and then the most interesting voices. But they're really saying what Judaism has been saying all along, and Yaakov's legacy is they're saying we should listen to both parts of every conflict and every dilemma and try and find a way to integrate it. It's just that we believe that the Torah is the best way to do this integration. Now, combining the two perspectives is really saying the following. He's saying Judaism is incomplete without a lot of amazing lights that are right now in the hands of Esav. Esav has amazing art, Esav has amazing science, Esav has amazing technology, Esav has psychology, Esav has feminism, and each one of these isms is, when taken just in and of itself, it usually goes against the Jewish traditional way of life. But if you take the spark, it's an amazing spark, it's a Geula spark. And that's bowing down in the sense of admitting. You know, Rabbi Nachman, Likutei Moharan, first Torah, he says all the beauty, all the chen is at the hands of the Goyim now. That's part of the Galut. They have the beauty, the power. And he's talking about especially Esav. So Esav is saying, and also, for every Baal Tshuva, every Baal Tshuva knows that there's amazing worlds of sensibility and sensitivity and wisdom and knowledge and ideas that they're amazing. But he decided to leave this world because it doesn't build a proper way of life. That's why he likes Judaism. But he also says, well, but I really miss those aesthetics and those ideas and those energies.
Smaller amounts.
Yeah, so I need to find a careful, gradual way to take all those lights and put them into the vessels that Judaism has been building up throughout these millennia. And I have to take them and, so admitting that Judaism is incomplete. Judaism, we're not coming back to the religion of our forefathers. We're coming back to a religion that is, Judaism has not yet been revealed to the world. It exists only in the future. And we're now it's now a shadow of its future self, not of its former self. Its future self is when Judaism incorporates all the lights, all the amazing lights of Esav into the vessels of Torah. So admitting that is saying that Esav has amazing lights. And on the other hand, but Esav can't tell the difference between his light and his mistakes. His light and the way he implements them and then does foolish mistakes all the time. It will only create traumas for the next generation, which will then rebel against this generation and go in totally different. And this kind of swerving in one direction, the swerving in the other direction, we don't want that. That's a chaotic, that's a kings of chaos kind of progression. We want, in the university you learn that in order to write a thesis, you have to say, well, everyone who came before me is wrong, and now I'm going to say something that nobody's ever said before. In the Bet Midrash, what do you say? He says, I'm not going to say anything new. I just want to explain what previous generations said. But then the biggest chidushim come. You come out of a sense of continuity and humility in regard to, you don't throw away anything. You just try and interpret it in a way that now you can move things forward in a way that grows out of all the previous stages of development of Judaism. You're not killing your father, so to speak. You're not killing the previous generation. You're not saying, well, I want the old idea to die and the new ideal, the king is dead, long live the new king. No, we're saying we love all the previous kings and we want to evolve out of that, not even the revolutions are very evolutionary in Judaism. They're evolutionary revolutions. So that's a rectified tikkun way of progressing. And so, again, bowing before Esav, one meaning is admitting that all these lights and energies and visions, we need them, we lack them. And the future Geula Judaism is going to incorporate them, and we don't have them right now. We need to have, Kedusha cinema, and Kedusha psychology, and Kedusha feminism, and Kedusha everything. But we don't have it, we're working on it, gradually. And the other sense of bowing down is I want to be above it, I want to be connected to Hashem, to the tradition, to Torah. And then I'm looking at it sort of, and how is the promise of Yaakov fulfilled when he says, I will meet you in Esav? Like we said, he's not doing it. It's future generations. It's said in the prophet Obadiah. Obadiah was an Edomite convert. He came from Edom. He became a convert. And then he said in the future, Ya'alu Moshi'im behar Tzion lishpot et har Esav v'ayta Hashem mamlucha. Saviors shall climb the mountain of Tzion, of Zion, and shall judge. Judge is clarify, rectify, or distill the good from the bad regarding the mountain of Esav, and then God shall truly be the king. God who created both Yaakov and Esav. So it means we're standing on our own mountain. I'm not going to come to your mountain like Yaakov seems to be implying. You go, I'm going to go slowly after you and meet you at your mountain. He's really saying, I'm going to go to my own mountain. I'm going to do it my own way, the Jewish way of this gradual, balanced way, and I'm going to climb this mountain, and then I'm going to judge. Judge here means to take the good from the bad. I'm going to be judgmental. That's being above you. So I'm bowing down before you in the sense that you have something that I need, that we need, we all need it, and I'm going to give you also something, because ultimately we want to be Hashem to be king and over all of us. It's good for you also, but You're my master, I'm your slave, so to speak, in the sense that I'm the learner and you're the teacher. But on the other hand, I'm on my own mountain, which means I can stay apart from you and higher than you, and be there to use the Torah and use Hashem's wisdom to tell me what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong and what's the spark and what's the shell. And if I study Torah carefully, I can tell what's the spark in psychology and what's the spark in feminism, what's the spark in science, and what's the spark in every idea and ideal within Western, in all civilizations. And so this twin perspectives is something we really need to integrate if we are to fulfill our destiny and our mission as Jews, as the sons of Yaakov, of Israel, and incorporate all the lights of Esav.
Very good. I'm not tired.
So, it's always hard to finish a class because now I have all this light and now I need to land back into my vessels.
Can you give a practical example of what it looks like where Yaakov or Judaism properly integrates Western society? Or is that still in development?
No, yeah, well, I gave several examples. So I just finished writing a book about the women of the Bible, and it's really about rectifying feminism. And it's about the idea that there is an idea within Judaism that women need to be equal to men. And it's a very ancient vision. An ideal.
Very serious idea.
Yeah, very serious, and it's in Kabbalah. But the way to do it is in a way that it doesn't negate traditional femininity. It incorporates new elements of being a Torah student and Torah teacher and a leader, but into a lot of elements of traditional femininity. So how to combine new femininity with traditional femininity, that's one example. And another thing would be, like I mentioned several times, individualism. Individualism there's a very high light to this. This is the depth of the unique soul, that each soul being extremely unique and having its own psychological depth to it. And you need to open this up, but in a way that is incorporated into the circles of identity and of belonging to a family and to a people and to the world, and not a contrarian individualism, which is an individualism which is saying, you're not going to tell me who I am, I'm going to tell you who I am, and that's a monologous individualism. We need dialogue type individualism. So it all has to do with combining values that appears to be opposite, but they're really complementary.
So I fully understand being needy in a previous, still am, I suppose, technically, but it even has to be simpler. Like I feel like I had experiences where I could break it down to a really small, basic concept, or not concept, but actually a practicality. Do you know what I mean to say? Where it's very basic for a Gentile to understand.
So that requires more thinking on my behalf. Well, technology is a very good example, a very simple example. Is that you have this amazing technology of communication, and we can say it's a curse, and we can say it's an all-time blessing. And if it's a curse, nobody should have it. And if it's an all-time blessing, that kids should have it from the moment they can use it. And then doing it carefully and gradually means asking yourself, that's progressing slowly. That's what morality is. We have this thing, now we're not drunk. We're not immediately saying if it can be done, it should be done. We're saying, okay, it can be done. Now let's think about whether it should be done, how it should be done, how much it should be done, starting from what age it should be used, and so on. So that's the simplest example I can come up with right now.
It sounds like you open these little gates where you get a little bit of leeway on either side.
Mm-hmm.
So the person can balance a little versus feeling contained.
Yep.
And so eventually that person will bounce hopefully into the right spot where there's a perfect balance and whatever realm of understanding.
Yeah, you don't go for the total pendulum that's never going to balance. It's going to push in one direction to the other. That's the kings of Tohu. And you're trying to find something that has a little bit of both directions, but doesn't go as extremely, and then you're able to combine them. It's not a central point. It's the Kabbalah has 3 lines.
Yeah.
So you're going in all 3, in 2 directions and combining them, but you're doing it gradually.
Does it become hard?
Science is able to explain reality just in terms of physical properties. So that's an amazing thing. If you're running with this all the way, you're saying, so there's no spirituality, there's no soul, there's no God, there's no higher world. But you're saying, oh, that's a wonderful, amazing description of physical reality. Let's integrate it to something bigger that also has spiritual elements. Again, it's being more moderate and more careful and more slow in the way you integrate concepts. Hi, if you've gotten this far, you've probably enjoyed the class. If so, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Patreon is a platform designed to help independent creators receive financial support from their followers. These classes take time and effort to make, and any amount really helps. You can check out the link to my Patreon account in the description below. Thank you.